great hall of the alien palace was silent. Guards lined the walls, their silver armor shining under the strange blue lights. Every eye in the chamber was fixed on the human who walked slowly across the floor. He felt the weight of thousands of whispers pressing down on him. He had been summoned before the queen, and no one refused the queen. The human's steps echoed, each sound bouncing against the marble pillars. The air felt heavy, almost alive, as if the palace itself judged him. He stopped when he reached the foot of the throne. The alien queen sat high above, her crown of crystal glowing softly. Her eyes were sharp, burning with the kind of fire that could cut through lies. The queen spoke, her voice filling the hall like thunder. "Human, you keep distance from my daughter. Why?" The question hung in the air like a blade. The crowd leaned closer, eager to hear the answer. But the human remained silent, his head bowed. Around him, alien nobles hissed in anger. Some whispered that the human had insulted the princess. Others claimed he was hiding a betrayal. The queen raised her hand, and silence fell again. Her gaze locked on him, waiting, demanding. The human's mind drifted back. He remembered the first time he met the princess. She was curious, kind, and unafraid. While other aliens had looked at him with suspicion, she had spoken to him with warmth. She had smiled, and in that smile he had seen something rare, something human, hidden within an alien heart. But that smile had also carried danger, a danger he could never explain. Not yet. He clenched his fists as the queen repeated her question, her voice sharper this time. "Why do you avoid her?" The human looked up. His eyes met the queen's, and the entire hall froze. "I cannot answer that. Not here, not now," he said softly. Gasps echoed through the chamber. The nobles were outraged, calling him disrespectful. One guard even stepped forward, hand on his weapon, but the queen raised her hand once more and all obeyed. The queen leaned forward, her voice low and dangerous. "You stand in my court, before my throne, and you deny me the truth." The human swallowed hard. He could feel his heart beating faster. He knew that one wrong word could mean his death, but he also knew that revealing the truth too soon would mean disaster. The queen's daughter sat quietly at her mother's side, her eyes wide, her face pale. She stared at the human with confusion and hurt. She had asked him before why he had pulled away, why he no longer met her in the gardens, why he turned cold when she reached for his hand, and each time he had given no answer, only silence, only distance. The memory cut deep. He had seen the sadness in her eyes. He had seen the way her shoulders fell when he walked away. But he had no choice, because he had learned something terrible, something that no one else could know. Now, standing before the queen, he felt trapped. If he spoke, he risked everything. If he stayed silent, he risked even more. The nobles began to shout again, demanding punishment. They wanted him removed, exiled, or executed. But the queen raised her hand a third time, and silence returned. Her voice carried both fury and curiosity. "Human, I will not ask again. Why do you keep away from my daughter?" The human's chest tightened, his mouth opened, but the words refused to come. He thought of the secret hidden deep inside the palace. He thought of the prophecy carved into stone. He thought of the weapon that slumbered within the princess herself, a weapon even she did not know existed. His voice broke the silence, quiet but firm. "My queen, the reason I keep distance is not out of hate, nor insult, nor betrayal." "Then what?" she pressed. The hall leaned forward, waiting. The human lowered his head again. "It is because the truth would destroy her, and perhaps all of us." The queen's eyes narrowed. The chamber gasped once more. The words struck like thunder in the hearts of everyone listening. The queen's daughter trembled, staring at him. Tears formed in her eyes, but she said nothing. The nobles hissed louder than before, calling him liar, deceiver, coward. The queen raised her hand, silencing them again. Her voice cut the air like a blade. "You will explain yourself, human," she commanded. The human closed his eyes. He knew the moment he feared had arrived, but he also knew that revealing the truth now would only bring chaos. Still, he had no choice. He drew in a breath and whispered words that no one expected. "My queen," he said, his voice trembling, "I keep distance because the danger is not me, but within your daughter herself." The chamber exploded in uproar. The queen's face turned pale, her eyes wide with shock. The princess gasped, her hand covering her mouth. The human stood still, his heart pounding. He knew there was no turning back. And so, the silence that followed was heavier than any blade. The queen stared down at him, her voice shaking, caught between rage and fear. "What do you mean by that, human?" she asked. But the answer would not come, not yet. Not until the time was right. The hall trembled with whispers. The future of the human, the princess, and perhaps the entire realm hung in the balance. And as the queen's crown glowed brighter, the human knew one truth. This was only the beginning. The queen's words still echoed in the chamber. The human stood frozen, his last statement hanging like smoke over the silent court. He had said the danger was inside the queen's own daughter. Whispers rushed through the nobles like fire through dry grass. Some laughed in disbelief, others shouted for his head. The queen's eyes never left him, sharp as blades, waiting for the truth. But the human did not speak again. He lowered his gaze, his mind pulled back to the past, back to the moment when it all began, when he first met the princess in the hidden gardens of the palace. It was spring on the alien world. The trees glowed faintly under twin suns. Strange flowers opened and released silver dust into the air. And in the middle of that beauty stood the princess, her long robes trailing softly over the grass. She was alone, or at least she thought she was. The human had wandered into the garden, lost after his first day in the palace. When their eyes met, neither moved. The world seemed to pause. The princess spoke first, her voice gentle. "You are the human they brought from the stars." The human nodded, unsure what to say. She smiled, a smile warmer than any sun. "Then you are welcome here," she whispered. From that moment, their bond began. They met often in secret, in the gardens, in the empty halls, in the library where few dared to go. She showed him the hidden beauty of her world. He shared stories of earth, of oceans and rain and laughter. She laughed when he tried to teach her human jokes. He listened when she spoke of her loneliness inside the shining palace. For though she was the queen's daughter, she lived like a bird in a cage, surrounded by guards, watched at every step. She told him she envied his freedom. He told her he envied her courage, but their happiness did not last. One night, as the stars burned red, he stumbled upon something in the garden. A stone buried under the roots of a glowing tree, strange runes carved into its surface, glowing faintly as he touched it, and when he touched it, he saw visions of fire, war, and destruction. And at the center of the vision stood the princess, her eyes glowing with the same light, her hands raised as worlds burned. He had fallen back in horror, his chest tight. When he looked up, the princess was there watching. She had not seen what he had seen. Her eyes were so innocent, full of concern for him. "Are you hurt?" she asked, reaching out her hand. He pulled away, shaking, unable to answer. That was the night he began to distance himself. From then on, each meeting felt heavier. Every smile she gave cut deeper into his heart, because he knew something terrible lay hidden within her. He had read the runes, studied the stone in secret. They spoke of a weapon, not built, but born into royal blood, sleeping until the day of awakening, and the signs matched her, the queen's daughter. The weapon was her. The human tried to stay away, but she always found him, always asked why. Her eyes would search his face for answers he could not give. He told himself he must protect her by pushing her away, but every step he took from her, every silence he gave her, hurt them both. Now in the present, as the queen demanded answers, he remembered her tears. He remembered her voice whispering, "Why do you hate me now?" And his silence that followed. He had never hated her. He had only feared the truth. The queen leaned forward on her throne, her voice cutting through his memory. "You will explain this danger you speak of." The human's lips parted, but his words were broken. "I cannot. Not here. Not before so many," he whispered. The nobles erupted again, calling him liar, calling him coward. The queen slammed her staff on the floor, and thunder rolled through the hall. "Enough," she shouted, silencing them all. Her daughter, the princess, finally rose to her feet. Her voice was soft but steady. "Mother, if he speaks of me, then let him speak to me." Gasps filled the chamber. The princess stepped down from the throne and walked toward the human, her eyes locked on his, filled with pain, filled with demand. "Tell me," she whispered, "why do you keep away from me?" The hall was silent, the nobles frozen in shock. The queen's face tightened with fear and anger, but she did not stop her daughter. All eyes turned to the human. He looked at the princess, at the tears she fought to hide. His heart ached, every memory of their secret bond crashing down on him, but he could not tell her the full truth. Not yet. The danger was too great, the court too hungry for blood. His voice broke the silence. "My princess," he whispered, "I kept away because the closer I am to you, the greater the danger becomes." Her breath caught, her lips trembled. The queen's hands tightened around her staff. The chamber roared with confusion, but the human's eyes stayed on hers. "I kept away because I wanted to protect you," he said, his voice shaking, "even if it meant breaking my own heart." The hall erupted once more. The nobles shouted, the guards moved closer, the queen's face turned pale, torn between fury and fear, and the princess stood frozen, her tears falling, her voice trembling. "Protect me." "From what?" she asked. But the human could not answer. Not yet. The truth was too heavy, too dangerous. And so silence returned, a silence louder than any scream. The human's words still echoed in the queen's hall. He had told the princess he stayed away only to protect her, but he had not explained from what. The silence that followed was heavy. Every noble in the chamber felt the weight of it. The nobles whispered among themselves. Some said the human was lying to win sympathy. Others believed he had discovered a dark secret, but all of them agreed on one thing. The human was dangerous. High in the balcony, cloaked figures watched the trial. They were alien generals, rivals of the queen. They feared the bond between the human and the princess. For if the human gained her trust, he could influence the future of the throne. So they spread their poison with whispers, telling others that the human cursed the princess, that his words were spells to weaken the royal family. The queen sat still, her crown glowing faintly, her eyes locked on the human. She did not know whether to believe him or destroy him. He, her daughter, trembled beside her, her heart torn between trust and fear. The human felt every eye on him. He wanted to speak, to reveal the prophecy.
But if he said too much, panic would tear the empire apart. He remembered the glowing stone he had found, the runes that spoke of a child born with fire in her blood, a fire that could consume worlds, and he remembered the vision of her standing alone in flames. He could not share that vision, not here, not now, so he stayed silent, and silence only fed the hunger of the court. The generals whispered louder, their voices like venom sliding through the crowd. "He insults the queen by refusing her," one said. "He hides treason in his heart," another hissed. Soon, the crowd demanded his punishment. They wanted chains, exile, even death. The queen raised her hand, and the voices fell. Her words were sharp. "You say you protect my daughter, human, but from what? Speak, or I will end this silence with your blood." The human's chest tightened. He wanted to tell her everything, but he could not. His voice cracked as he said, "My queen, the truth is not safe for this hall. If I speak it here, it will break your kingdom apart." Gasps filled the chamber. The queen's hand trembled on her staff. Her daughter stepped forward, her eyes locked on him. Her voice was softer than the queen's, but it cut deeper. "Then tell me alone," she whispered. The human looked at her. He saw her pain, her confusion, her desperate need to know, and it shattered his heart. But before he could answer, the hall doors burst open. A messenger rushed in, his face pale. He bowed before the queen, his voice trembling. "My queen, the outer watch reports movement," a signal from the ruins beyond the valley, the same place the human once explored. The court gasped. The queen's eyes snapped to the human. "You have been to those ruins?" she demanded. The human's silence was answer enough. The generals smiled in the shadows. This was their chance. "See," one shouted, "he trespassed in forbidden places. He has brought a curse upon the princess." The nobles echoed the accusation, their voices rising like a storm. The queen's fury burned hotter. Her daughter looked torn, her lips trembling, and the human felt the circle closing around him. He remembered the ruins, the broken walls covered in glowing symbols, the vision carved into stone, the weapon born into royal blood. He remembered the way the ground had shaken when he read the prophecy, and how the trees had whispered with voices that were not their own. He knew the truth, but he also knew that truth would destroy everything. The queen rose from her throne, her voice thundered through the hall. "Enough," she roared, her crown flared with light. Silencing the crowd, she pointed her staff at the human. "You will be taken to the lower chambers. There you will speak the truth, and if you lie, you will not leave alive." Guards moved forward, their steps heavy. The human did not resist. He lowered his head, but as they took him away, he saw the princess's eyes, tears streamed down her face, and she whispered so softly that only he could hear, "Please, do not leave me in the dark." The general smiled as the guards dragged him down the stairs. Their plan was working. If the queen lost trust in the human, the bond between him and the princess would be broken forever. But in the shadows, one old noble whispered something different. What if he speaks the truth? What if the danger is real? In the dark halls below, the human's footsteps echoed. The air was colder, filled with the smell of stone and secrets. He knew what awaited him: interrogation, chains, and perhaps death. But worse than all of that was the memory of the princess's face, her eyes filled with questions, her heart filled with pain, and he whispered to himself in the silence, "I must protect her, even if it destroys me." The lower chambers were cold and silent. The walls were carved from dark stone, covered in faint runes that glowed softly. The guards pushed the human forward, chains rattling around his wrists.
The queen herself followed, her staff glowing with authority. The princess walked behind her mother, silent, but her eyes never left the human. They reached the center of the chamber. A circle of light burned on the floor, ancient and alive. The guards forced the human to kneel inside it. The queen raised her staff and spoke words in her ancient tongue. The circle blazed brighter, wrapping him in a cage of light. "Now," the queen's voice was sharp, "you will tell me the truth." Her daughter stood beside her, trembling. Her eyes begged him to speak. The human's chest rose and fell as he struggled for words. He remembered the ruins again, the stone under the tree, the runes that burned like fire, the visions that tore through his mind, and the truth he had carried in silence ever since. He knew he could not keep it hidden anymore. If he did, the danger would only grow stronger. Slowly, he raised his head. His voice was heavy but steady. "My queen, when I first came to your palace, I thought your daughter was only kind and curious. She was the only one who spoke to me without fear. She treated me as equal, when others saw me as less." The princess's eyes filled with tears, but the queen's expression stayed cold. The human continued. "One night, I wandered into the garden and found an old stone, buried deep. When I touched it, it showed me visions. Visions of war, of fire, of destruction, and in those visions, I saw your daughter." The princess gasped, her hand rising to her mouth. The queen's staff flared with light. Her voice thundered, "Be careful, human." But he did not stop. His words came faster, heavier. She stood in the center of the flames. Her eyes glowed like the runes. Her hands tore worlds apart. She was the weapon the prophecy spoke of, the weapon born into royal blood. The chamber shook with his words. The guard stepped back in fear. The princess trembled, her knees weak. She whispered, "That cannot be true. I cannot be such a thing." But the human's eyes showed no lies. He wished he could deny it, but he could not. The queen's face hardened. Her voice was sharp as a blade. "You dare call my daughter a weapon?" The human's chains rattled as he raised his hands. "My queen, I do not say this to harm her, I say it to protect her. If the wrong hands awaken what sleeps within her, your empire will burn." The silence that followed was crushing. Even the glowing runes seemed to hold their breath. The queen's daughter shook her head. "No, you kept away from me because of this. You broke my heart because you believed I am a curse." Her voice cracked, tears streaming down her face. The human's eyes burned with pain. "No, princess. Never a curse. You are not the danger. The danger is what others will do when they discover the truth." The queen stepped closer, her crown blazing. "Who else knows of this prophecy?" she demanded. The human lowered his eyes. "The generals, my queen. I believe they already suspect it. They watch her. They whisper in shadows. They wait for their chance." The queen's staff shook in her hands. She knew the generals craved power. If they learned her daughter carried a weapon within, they would twist it, use it, perhaps even kill her to control it. The princess fell to her knees, her voice trembling. "Mother, what if it is true? What if something inside me is waiting to awaken? What if I hurt everyone I love?" The queen knelt beside her, holding her shoulders. "You are my daughter, not a weapon. I will not allow this lie to break you." But her eyes betrayed her doubt. Her hands trembled as she held her child, and for the first time, the human saw fear in the alien queen. The chamber doors slammed open. A guard rushed in, his face pale, his breath uneven. My queen, forgive me. The generals gather in the upper hall. They demand the human's execution. They claim he curses the princess with forbidden words. The queen's eyes darkened. She rose to her feet, her voice cold. Then let them come. Let them hear the truth. But the human's heart sank. He knew the generals would not listen. They already had their minds poisoned. They would twist the truth into a blade, and soon the real war would begin. The queen turned to him one last time. Human, if what you say is true, then you have brought fire into my house. The human met her eyes. And if I stay silent, my queen, that fire will consume us all. The upper halls of the palace trembled with voices. The generals had gathered, their robes heavy with jewels, their faces twisted with greed. They marched together like predators circling prey. Their whispers spread through the nobles, poisoning every ear. The human has cursed the princess, they hissed. He dares call her a weapon. He must die before his lies spread further. The queen stood firm in her chamber, her staff glowing with fire. Her daughter sat at her side, her hands trembling, her heart broken by what she had heard. The human knelt in chains, silent but unbroken. He knew the storm outside the chamber was not just anger. It was the beginning of a war within the palace walls. The generals entered, their steps echoing like drums of judgment. They bowed only slightly before the queen, their eyes burning with false respect. One of them spoke, his voice sharp. My queen, we cannot allow this human to insult the bloodline. He calls your daughter cursed. He poisons your court with fear. If you do not act, the people will rise against you. The queen's eyes narrowed, her voice thundered through the chamber. No one rises against me. But though her words were strong, the generals saw the flicker of doubt in her eyes. They pressed harder, circling her like wolves. Then let us deal with him. Let us cleanse the palace of his lies. The princess rose suddenly, her voice cutting through the storm. No, she cried. The chamber fell silent. Her eyes burned with tears, but her voice was steady. You call him a liar, but he has only spoken to protect me. He has given me pain, yes, but not betrayal. He kept away because of fear, not hate. The nobles gasped, shocked at her defiance. The generals exchanged sharp glances. If the princess stood with the human, their plan would falter. They could not allow her voice to sway the queen. So one general stepped forward, his eyes cold. Child, you are blinded by your feelings for him. Do you not see? He uses your heart as a weapon against us. The princess's face turned pale. Her lips trembled, but she did not back down. I see only that he has risked his life to tell a truth none of you dare speak. The generals hissed, furious. Their whispers spread like fire again. The princess is already under his spell, they said. Soon she will betray us all. The queen struck her staff against the stone, thunder rolling through the chamber. Silence, she commanded. Her crown glowed, her eyes blazing. You forget yourselves. You stand in my court, not your own. The generals lowered their heads, but the hatred in their eyes did not fade. The human watched all of this in silence. He saw the way the generals moved, the way their whispers twisted truth into lies. He knew they feared the prophecy as much as he did, but unlike him, they wanted to control it. If they could prove the princess carried the weapon inside her, they would twist her fate into their power, and the galaxy would fall under their hands. The queen turned to the human. You have spoken of a prophecy, but you give no proof, only fear. Her words cut deep, but they were true. The human lowered his head. The proof lies in the ruins, my queen. Bring the stone. Let your scholars read it. Let the truth speak through the ancient words, not the... Rough my mouth alone. The chamber filled with uneasy murmurs. The generals shouted over them. Lies, tricks, deceptions. He seeks to lead us to forbidden places. He wants us to waste our strength while he hides his true plan. Their voices grew louder, feeding the flames of doubt. The princess suddenly moved. She stepped toward the human, her hands trembling, her eyes locked on his. Then I will go with him, she said. The hall froze. Her words were like lightning splitting the sky. The queen's face darkened. No, child, you will not, she said firmly, but the princess did not bow her head. For too long I have lived in shadows. For too long others have decided my fate. If the truth lies in those ruins, I will see it with my own eyes. I will know if I am weapon or daughter." The queen's heart broke at her words. She wanted to shield her child from pain, but she also knew she could not keep her locked away forever. The generals snarled in anger. Their plan was slipping. If the princess left with the human, she might see the truth and turn against them. One general raised his voice. "If you allow this, my queen, you risk the throne itself. The people will never follow a cursed princess." The queen turned her burning eyes on him. "Careful," she warned. "You speak too boldly of my bloodline." The human looked at the princess, her eyes filled with both fear and courage. He whispered softly, so only she could hear. "If you walk this path, there is no turning back." She answered with a trembling smile. "Then I will walk it with you." The chamber shook with the weight of her words. The queen stood torn between love, fear, and duty. The generals whispered louder, plotting already, and the human knew the shadows around them were tightening. The conspiracy was no longer hidden. It was alive, growing stronger with every heartbeat. The chamber was filled with tension. The princess's words still echoed. She had declared she would walk with the human to the ruins. The nobles were stunned, the generals enraged, and the queen stood torn. Between her duty as ruler and her love as mother, the human remained in chains, but his spirit was unbroken. He knew the moment had come when silence could no longer protect anyone. If he stayed quiet now, the conspiracy would devour the princess, and the prophecy would unfold in the darkest way possible. The queen raised her hand, demanding silence. Her eyes burned as she looked at the human. "Enough of secrets," she said coldly. "You speak of visions, of prophecies, of dangers. Now you will speak clearly, or I will end your life before the sun sets." The hall was silent. Every noble leaned forward, every general sharpened his ears. The princess stepped closer, her trembling hand brushing the chains on his wrists. Her voice was soft but steady. Tell me what you saw in those ruins." The human lifted his head, his eyes heavy with sorrow. He wished he could protect her from this truth forever, but there was no longer a choice. His voice echoed across the chamber. "I saw fire," he whispered. "I saw galaxies burning. I saw armies falling to dust, and at the center of it all stood you, princess." The princess's breath caught. Her lips parted, but no words came. The queen's staff shook in her hand. The generals smirked in satisfaction. They wanted this truth revealed. They would twist it into poison. The human's voice grew stronger. The runes spoke of a child born with royal blood, carrying within her a weapon older than empires, a power not made but inherited, sleeping until the time of awakening, and when I touched the stone, it showed me that you are the one, princess. The weapon is inside you. The chamber erupted. Nobles cried out in shock, some in horror, others in disbelief. The generals shouted, their voices dripping with triumph. "See, the human himself admits it. The princess is cursed. She is not fit to rule." The queen struck her staff, lightning, and flaring through the chamber. "Silence," she roared. The princess fell back, her knees weak, her eyes filled with tears that refused to fall. Her voice trembled. "No, it cannot be. I am no weapon. I am not meant to destroy." She looked at the human with desperate eyes. "Why did you not tell me before? Why did you let me live in blindness?" The human's heart broke. His chains rattled as he reached forward, though he could not touch her. "I stayed silent to protect you. If I had told you then, the generals would have used you. They would have turned your gift into a weapon for their wars. I thought distance would shield you, but it only brought you pain." Her tears finally fell, shining like stars on her cheeks. The queen stood frozen, her crown glowing as if torn between two futures, one where her daughter was heir, and one where her daughter was doom. The generals stepped forward, their voices like daggers. "My queen, you must act now. The prophecy cannot be denied. If you keep her, the galaxy will burn. End this before it is too late." The queen's staff shook in her grip, her lips parted, but she could not speak. The princess cried out, her voice shaking, "Mother, do you believe them? Do you see me as a curse now?" The queen's silence was heavier than any answer. The human saw the doubt in her eyes, and for the first time rage burned in him. He rose to his knees, his voice thundering. "Do not listen to them. They fear her because of what she might be. But I have seen more than flames. I have seen her heart, and her heart is not a weapon. her heart is hope. The chamber shook with his words. Even the runes on the walls flickered brighter. The princess gasped, her tears falling faster. The generals hissed with fury. They shouted over him. Lies, tricks, manipulation. He has bewitched both queen and princess. Execute him before he poisons the empire further. The queen's staff struck the floor. Enough, she shouted. And her voice shook with both fury and fear. She turned to her daughter, her face pale. Child, if this prophecy is true, then your path is one of fire and blood. How can I protect you from such a fate? The princess raised her head. Her voice was fragile, but inside it burned a spark of courage. By letting me face it, mother. Not by locking me in shadows, not by silencing him, but by standing with me. Whatever I am, weapon or daughter, I will not run from the truth. The queen stared at her, torn between love and terror. The human's chest tightened with pride and sorrow, for he saw in her the strength that had drawn him to her from the beginning, and he whispered softly, "Prophecy or not, you are more than they fear. You are more than they deserve." The generals moved again, their voices rising like storm winds, but beneath their shouting, one truth had already taken root. The princess now knew. The secret was no longer hidden, and nothing would ever be the same. The chamber was chaos. The generals shouted, their voices sharp as blades. The nobles argued, some demanding the princess's exile, others begging for mercy. The guards shifted nervously, unsure if they served the queen or the rising fury of the court. The air itself felt heavy, trembling with the weight of prophecy. The queen stood tall in the center, her crown blazing with light. Her face was pale, her hands trembling on her staff. She looked at her daughter, who stood with tears on her cheeks but fire in her eyes. She looked at the human, still chained, yet unyielding in spirit, and she looked at the generals, their hungry gazes waiting for her to fall. Her heart was torn in two. One part was mother, desperate to protect her child. The other was queen, bound to shield her people. If the prophecy was true, her daughter could destroy galaxies, but if it was false, killing or casting her aside would shatter the throne forever. The generals struck first, their leader stepping forward. "My queen, the time for hesitation is over. If you do not act, the people will lose faith. This human has confessed it himself. Your daughter carries destruction inside her. Choose the empire or lose it." The queen's lips trembled, but before she could speak, the princess raised her voice louder than ever before. "I will not be silent any longer," she cried. Her voice shook the chamber like thunder. "I am your daughter, not your curse. If there is power inside me, I will not let it be twisted. I will decide my fate, not these liars." The nobles gasped at her defiance. The generals hissed with fury, and the human's chest swelled with pride at her courage. She stepped closer to him, ignoring the guards. Her hand brushed his chains, her eyes locked on his. "You believed in me even when it broke you," she whispered. "Now I will believe in myself." The queen's breath caught. She saw the fire of her bloodline burning in her child, not the fire of a weapon, but the fire of will, the same strength she herself had carried when she fought for her throne. Tears threatened her eyes, but she held them back. The generals moved as one. They drew hidden blades, their plan revealed. "We cannot wait for your weakness to doom us," they roared. "If you will not kill her, we will." The guards shouted, but the generals struck too fast. Steel flashed in the torchlight. The princess cried out. But before the blades could reach her, the human threw himself forward, chains shattering as if by unseen force. The hall froze. The light from the rune circle burned brighter than ever before. The human stood free, his wrists bleeding but his spirit unbroken. He blocked the generals with his body. His voice was thunder. "If you touch her, you will face me." The generals laughed cruelly. "A chained outsider dares defy us? You are nothing." But their blades trembled, for something unseen stirred in the air. The runes on the walls glowed, the circle flared, and the princess herself begged. And to shine, her eyes glowed softly, not with rage but with light. The same power that had haunted the human's visions awakened, but it was not destruction, not fire. It was something pure, something alive. The generals staggered back in fear. "What is this?" they shouted. "This is not the weapon." The human turned to the queen. "Do you see now? Her heart is stronger than their lies. She is not curse, she is hope." The queen's staff glowed like a star. She saw it too. The prophecy had been twisted by fear. Her daughter was not meant to end the galaxy, she was meant to protect it. The generals screamed. They lunged again. desperate to kill her before her power grew. But the queen raised her staff, lightning shot across the chamber, striking the floor at their feet. Her voice was fire. You dare raise blades against my blood? You are traitors, not guardians. From this moment you are no longer generals, you are enemies of the throne. Guards rushed forward, steel clashing against steel. The nobles scattered in terror. The chamber became a storm of blades and fire. The human fought with bare hands, tearing a blade from one general. The princess stood behind him, her light pushing back the shadows. The queen herself struck with her staff, every blow filled with fury. At last the generals fell, their rebellion crushed. The chamber was left scarred, the air heavy with smoke and silence. The queen stood over their fallen forms, her crown glowing. She turned to her daughter, her voice breaking. Forgive me, child. I doubted you, but never again. The princess fell into her mother's arms. Her tears were warm, her light fading back into silence. The human stood nearby, wounded but alive. The queen looked at him, her eyes filled with gratitude. You stood against them when no one else did. You saw truth when even I could not. From this day you will not be prisoner. You will stand at my daughter's side, protector of the realm. The nobles bowed. The guards lowered their weapons. The chamber that once echoed with fear now filled with hope. The prophecy had not ended.